For the first time in a long time, at least on this channel. Some of you know, some of you don't. I do almost everything at Credo House YouTube page now. I do everything. That's where I do everything that I do is through that page. I don't use Camaro Theologian at all anymore. Really, very, very seldom. But one of the things, I don't have the Camaro anymore. One of these days I'll get one back. I'll get my 69 Camaro. It may be I have to wait till I get to heaven to get that. But hey, that's still my dream car, and God will honor that dream car. He told me through prophetic revelation. Just kidding, he didn't. But I wanted to talk to you guys real quick about Credo House YouTube page, but also about my studies in Psalms and Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, the wisdom literature in general. And one of the things that has struck me, the wisdom literature just has to do with kind of the literature of the Bible, the genre of the Bible, although it's more than a genre, but the genre of the Bible that speaks to issues of wisdom. Usually it's individual chapters. It's not a big long story. It's not a history. It's just people's thoughts. That's kind of it. It's thoughts. And sometimes they come out in poetic language and songs. That's what the Psalms are. Psalms are songs. That is, they are meant to be sung and memorized. And so that's what wisdom literature is about. Even Job is part of the wisdom literature, if you can consider it, you know, a poetic book. I think it's history and poetry at the same time, but that's another note. But here's one thing I've always thought about, and that has confused me about the relationship. Well, first off, the Psalms. The reason why so many of us love the Psalms is because of its dynamic versatility, because it is so emotional on a three-dimensional level. And what I mean is that the psalmist, David, and the other psalmist as well, David wrote most of the Psalms, but the psalmist is not a flat character. He presents he is relatable in the Psalms more than anybody else in the Bible, I think. Because you can see yourself, whether you're a happy person, sad person, broken person, frustrated person, sinful person. He doesn't hold back. The transparency is out of this world. And that is the thing that you ought to grab a hold of. God wants us to be transparent. He wants us to be able to express ourselves. We do not put on fake masks in order to be a part of the Christian community. The psalmist never did. I mean, he was bruises and open wounds and beaten up. I mean, he would just express however he's feeling that day. And many times he's feeling, you know, very cheerful and wants to praise God about the great things God has done, but then other times very confused. Where in the world is God? Why have you left me? Other times, you know, very repentful. This is all my fault. I'm sinner. My sins have overcome me, and you know, my bones I feel it in my bones so much that my sin is destroying me. That kind of stuff. And we can all relate to that, because no matter what place you have been emotionally, the psalmist has been there too. So David is a very dynamic character. He's very three-dimensional. And that's one of the things that we all love about it, or maybe the main thing we love about it. We can relate to it. Now, whenever you're reading through it, you can see the psalmist, you know, from one day, recognizing God, recognizing his glory, his majesty, who he is, you know, just imagining how great God is and being overwhelmed by it, but then the next day just being overwhelmed by his own sin. And he calls sometimes on God to smite the unrighteous. And then at other times he talks about his own unrighteousness. It's just a great book. But it's confusing because you look at a lot of this stuff, and you look at passages from Proverbs, let's say, another wisdom book. And Proverbs just gives instructions. Here's how to live life. Here are quick, pithy statements about if you do this, then this will happen. They're not promises. They're just the way the world works. And the Proverbs is expressing as a father to a son teaching him how the world works. It's all about working hard. It's all about fearing God. It's all about the things that you do in order to have a good life type thing. And everything in it is just golden too. I mean, like I said, this is not a context. You can take individual proverbs and they have their own context. They every line, every sentence teaches something. Every parallelism teaches something. And then it moves on to something else. And I mean, kind of themes, but generally speaking, they all are just their individual context. So, like, train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. Do not spare the rod from the child, or he will go wild and crazy. It's better to live in the corner of an attic than to live with a nagging wife. Those kind of things that are just wisdom statements. The person who works hard gets things. The person who doesn't work hard falls into ruin. It's not promises, because we all can talk about exceptions to these rules. So I'm looking at this kind of stuff, and I'm trying to relate how books such as the Psalms and Ecclesiastes, like the Psalms, it's like one big lament, one big sad psalm about how bad the world is, or how worthless things seem type thing. It's not trying to teach us exactly how it is. It's just in the mindset of the writer of Ecclesiastes, who is broken because he's tried everything in the world and has not found fulfillment outside of very basic things like, just work hard and fear God. That's all that it comes down to, which are good. But at the same time, I don't think everything he says is necessarily true, but it does express an attitude. He says at one point in Ecclesiastes, who knows where the soul of man goes, whether it follows the animal to the ground or goes up to be with God. Who knows? And I'm like, well, of course we know. But at the same time, that's not what it's trying to express. It's not trying to create a theology of agnosticism towards the afterlife. It's trying to show you how sometimes we feel in our broken state and the questions that we have, and sometimes the delusionment that can overcome us because everything is so broken. And so you go to Proverbs, and Proverbs gives all these things. Do this, and this will happen. You want to be happy? Do this. It's like A, B equals C always. But in the Psalms and Proverbs, you always it's almost like, you know what? I've read the A, B equals C, and every time I do A, B, it equals F. It doesn't work out for me. And I think that combination is so important for us to know. It doesn't invalidate the Proverbs. The Proverbs are general statements of truth that don't necessarily apply in every situation. Train up a child in the way he should go, and generally speaking, he will come back to what you've trained him to do. It will be ingrained with him, generally speaking. So whenever something fails and you write a book like Ecclesiastes about your child going away and failing, and you say, what good is wisdom? What good is anything? Because that's what the writer of Ecclesiastes even says. What good is knowledge and all this learning? It does you nothing. It's vanity. It's chasing after the wind. It's a vapor of smoke that you're trying to catch. And so it seems worthless. But the combination of those things expresses reality in a fallen world. The reality is, as Proverbs teaches us, there are things that God has set up, and they are still good, always will be good, eternally good. But at the same time, whenever that meets a broken, fallen world, this is what happens. Expect it sometimes. Be ready. Be ready for the disillusionment that will overtake you. And I love that, because I don't like to feel alone. None of us do. One of the worst things about being sad, depressed, going through doubt, is you feel so alone, because people do not let you know about their own struggles. We hide them so much. But that is not what Ecclesiastes does. That is not what the psalmist does. You see them in their brokenness. You see them in their disillusionment. You see them where they meet the world head on, and the world does not act very friendly to them, and things don't work out the way they should. But listen, that's biblical. This is not new. It's not something we should be surprised by. It's not something that has God scratching his head. It is something that God is redeeming. That is what redemption is all about. This broken world will be put back together, and the things will work the way they are supposed to. But right now, things are broken. They are messed up. We have marred so much of God's creation, including ourselves, including our personality, including our will. And don't be surprised by the Psalms and the Ecclesiastes that come into your life. They will. But be comforted by it, because God has already said it. He's told you beforehand. Look, listen, you're going to go through this life, and here's what's going to happen. I just want you to be prepared for it. That's why the book of Job was written, and the suffering. Job did everything right, and the Proverbs did not really work out for him. It's a broken world, and God is in the midst of redeeming it. So stay encouraged. All right, don't forget to check us out over at Credo House page. Please make sure you subscribe there. That's where I do most of my stuff. And at the Credo House page, if I'm uploading this to Credo House, then you'll see it here as well. I'm probably going to upload this to both places, but I forget what I was going to say. But anyway, thanks for listening.